Hey there, economic warriors. It's your boy, the boss of economics, here to slice through the fluff, expose the government's dirty laundry, and show you how the bigwigs are setting us up for the mother of all economic crashes. Buckle up, because today, we're diving headfirst into the Eurozone's latest clown show, starring none other than ECB President Christine Lagarde. And let me tell you, folks, it's a doozy. Alright, let's set the stage. On June 5, 2025, Christine Lagarde, the Grand Maestro of the European Central Bank, steps up to the podium and basically says, "Hey, look at me, I've tamed inflation, the economy's chugging along, and our banks are healthier than a kale smoothie addict. Mission accomplished. Inflation is hovering around the ECB's sacred 2% target, growth is sustained, and the banking system is apparently rock solid. Oh, and after 8 interest rate cuts, the ECB is now kicking back, sipping espresso, and saying, we'll think about doing something in September 2025, maybe. No rush. Sounds like paradise, right? Wrong. This, my friends, is the calm before the storm. Lagarde's acting like she's just won the economic Super Bowl, but in reality, she's handed us a ticking time bomb wrapped in a shiny bow. And why? Because governments across the Eurozone, and their reckless mismanagement, are about to blow this whole thing sky high. Let's break this down, layer by layer, from the surface-level propaganda to the deep, dark economic rot underneath. Grab your popcorn, because this is gonna get spicy. First, let's talk about this so-called sweet spot Lagarde's crowing about. Inflation at 2%. Check. Stable growth. Check. Healthy banks. Check. Sounds like the ECB has cracked the code, right? But hold up, let's zoom out. The Eurozone's growth isn't exactly setting the world on fire. According to the latest OECD data, Eurozone GDP growth is limping along at a pathetic 1.2% annualized rate. Compare that to the US, which, despite Trump's tariff tantrums, is clocking in at 2.8%. And don't even get me started on China, which is still growing at 4.5% despite its own property market woes. So, when Lagarde calls this growth sustained, what she really means is barely breathing. And that 2% inflation target? Sure, it's on target now, but let's not forget how we got here. The ECB spent years asleep at the wheel, letting inflation spiral out of control post-pandemic, hitting a record 10.6% in October 2022. Then, they panicked, jacked up rates like a caffeinated day trader, and now they're patting themselves on the back because inflation's back to 2%. Folks, this isn't genius, it's whiplash. And the cost? Millions of European households crushed under higher borrowing costs, with mortgage defaults in countries like Spain and Italy spiking by 15% in 2024 alone. But hey, Lagarde's got her victory lap, so who cares about the little guy, right? Now, let's peel back the next layer. The ECB's shifting to patience mode, apparently because they've done such a bang-up job. No rate cuts planned for July 2025, and markets are betting on maybe, a cut in September 2025. Are you kidding me? This is the economic equivalent of a firefighter putting out a blaze, then sitting on the couch eating donuts while embers are still smoldering in the attic. And trust me, those embers are red hot. Take a look at the global backdrop. We've got wars raging in Ukraine and the Middle East, Trump threatening to slap 25% tariffs on European exports, and fiscal chaos brewing across the Eurozone. Yet Lagarde's acting like everything's peachy because their severe scenario models say the economy will keep growing even if trade wars escalate. Oh, really? Let's talk about those models. The ECB's own projections have been wrong more times than a broken clock. Remember when they predicted inflation would be transitory in 2021? Or when they said the Eurozone would grow by 3.5% in 2023, only for it to come in at a measly 0.4%. These models are about as reliable as a weather forecast from a fortune teller. And here's the kicker, even if the ECB's rosy scenarios hold up, they're ignoring the elephant in the room, government mismanagement. Lagarde herself hinted at it on French TV, saying governments need to reform, simplify, and encourage innovation and investment. Translation: hey, governments, stop screwing up, because I can't fix your mess forever. And boy, are they screwing up. Alright, here's where we get to the juicy stuff, the deep, systemic rot caused by government incompetence. Let's start with fiscal policy. As of June 2025, half of the EU's population lives in countries breaching the bloc's fiscal rules, which cap deficits at 3% of GDP and debt at 60% of GDP. France, Lagarde's home turf, is a prime example. Its budget deficit is ballooning at 5.5% of GDP, and public debt is a staggering 112% of GDP. Investors are already spooked, French bond yields spiked by 50 basis points in 2024 alone. And the cherry on top? The French government is so unstable it could collapse any day, leaving a fiscal black hole in its wake. Then there's Italy, where debt to GDP is a jaw-dropping 140%, and the government's response is to spend more on populist handouts. Greece, Portugal, Spain, you name it, they're all flirting with fiscal disaster. And don't even get me started on Germany, the supposed economic powerhouse of Europe. Sure, Lagarde's banking on Germany to boost growth through defense and infrastructure spending, but good luck with that. Germany's bureaucracy is so slow it took them 8 years to approve a single wind farm project. Meanwhile, their coalition government is on the verge of collapse over budget disputes. And let's not forget the Netherlands, a key Eurozone member, which as of this week doesn't even have a functioning government. How do you run an economy when you can't even run a country? This, folks, is the Eurozone in 2025, a house of cards built on quicksand, with governments too busy bickering to notice the tsunami coming. Now, let's zoom out even further. Lagarde's acting like the ECB can just chill while the world burns, but the global risks are stacking up like a Jenga tower on its last legs. First, there's Trump's tariff onslaught. The man's been threatening 25% tariffs on European goods, which would shave off an estimated 0.8% of Eurozone GDP in 2026 alone. That's not a severe scenario, that's a catastrophe for an economy already growing at snail's pace. And let's not forget, exports account for 47% of Eurozone GDP. When your economic lifeline is trade, and the biggest player in the game starts swinging a tariff hammer, you're in deep trouble. Then there's the war in Ukraine, which shows no signs of ending. Energy prices are still 30% higher than pre-war levels, crushing households and businesses alike. And speaking of energy, Germany's genius decision to shut down its nuclear plants in 2023 has left it dependent on expensive LNG imports, driving up costs for everyone. Meanwhile, the Middle East conflict is keeping oil prices volatile, with Brent crude hovering at $90 a barrel. Yet Lagarde sitting there, sipping her espresso, saying, "Oh, we'll navigate the uncertainty." Navigate? Lady, you're on the Titanic, and the iceberg's dead ahead. Here's the bottom line, folks, the Eurozone is a powder keg, and Lagarde's mission accomplished moment is nothing but a mirage. The ECB might have tamed inflation, but they're powerless against the real threat, government mismanagement. Fiscal irresponsibility, political instability, and a complete failure to reform are setting the stage for a recession that'll make the 2008 crisis look like a picnic. And when it hits, don't be surprised if Lagarde and her ECB cronies point the finger at external shocks, like Trump or Ukraine, instead of the real culprits, European governments. Mark my words, by mid-2026, we'll be looking at a Eurozone in freefall. Unemployment, already creeping up to 7.5%, will spike to double digits. Public debt crises will erupt in France, Italy, and beyond, with bond markets in full panic mode. And the ECB, with interest rates already near zero, will be out of ammo, forced to crank up the money printer and risk another inflation spiral. All because governments couldn't get their act together. So, what's the play here, economic warriors? If you're an ordinary Joe worried about your finances, start preparing now. Diversify your investments outside the Eurozone, look at emerging markets or even the US, where growth is stronger. If you're a finance pro, hedge against Eurozone risk like your life depends on it, because it just might. And for everyone, keep the pressure on your governments. Demand fiscal responsibility, demand reforms, and demand leadership that doesn't just kick the can down the road. This, my friends, is boss economics world, where we call it like we see it. The Eurozone's in for a reckoning, and Lagarde's victory lap is just the prelude to disaster. Stick around, hit that like button, and subscribe, because when the crash comes, you'll want the boss in your corner. Peace out.